This video is about the medicine source-based paper for the OCR History GCSE. We're just going to go through the question types with a few sources for examples, and I don't know, it's probably breaking all kinds of copyright laws, but oh well, don't tell anyone. So the 5 main question types are comprehension, reliability, usefulness, comparison, and interpretation. Comprehension questions are usually earlier on the paper, and they tend to be really quite short, simple, not very many marks, but it's quite easy to get the marks. And the question could be something like, what can you learn from source B about the artist's view on inoculation? Or what message does source C give? Or something like that. Whoever asked me to make this video said put some sources in that I thought would come up, and I have no idea, but this is a really common source, so maybe it'll come up, but then again it's probably come up before and they won't want to put the same one in again, but I didn't know, I'm not the exam board, so I just made it up. This is just an example of answering a comprehension question, and the question is, what's the message that the artist is trying to put across using this cartoon? So if you look at it straight away, we can see that it's death rowing through a river, and it could be that the artist believes that the river is causing death. That's just a very basic layout. Then you could take it deeper and look behind death and see that it's really posh buildings, which shows that everyone is affected by death due to this water. If you look in the river itself, you can see there's some dead animals, which tells us that the water is dirty, and these are all very obvious points. You could look at the caption of the source, like caption within the source, which says, "The silent highwayman, your money or your life." If we take that on a very basic level, we can see that this source is saying if you don't give your money over to pay for health reform changes and stuff, you'll die. But if we take it deeper, we can think, what's the message the artist is trying to say? He's trying to persuade people to give their money. So this could be government propaganda or something like that. And then finally, if we look at the actual caption of the cartoon itself, it says a cartoon from 1858 about the River Thames, and we know in 1858 there was the Great Stink on the River Thames, which shows that this whole source refers to the River Thames and the Great Stink. And it's basically, we know that's around the time of the 2 Public Health Acts, so we know it's probably trying to persuade people they need to pay for the changes for the second one. You'll always get a question about reliability or usefulness, and reliability questions are really easy to get marks on, as long as you know the basic idea. So photos are more reliable than cartoons, because they've got to be real, unless they've been photoshopped, but this is unlikely, especially in a GCSE paper. Although I think on the wall of our history classroom there's some random photoshopped image of the emperor or something. But photos could only show one point of view, because you don't know why this photo was taken, who took it. It could just be in one direction, so one direction there could be beautiful countryside, and right behind the person who took the picture there could be a dump or something. Sources written at the time are more likely to be accurate and correct than those written later, because they could have got some incorrect details, because say we were talking about the war, we're not because it's medicine paper, but say we were talking about the war, if we wrote it within the war, we probably wrote it that day, that week, that month, so we've got most of the details. But if we wrote it 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later in a book about the war, we might have forgotten a few things and just made it up to make it seem like we knew what happened. And you've always got to look at who wrote the source and whether they could be biased. Think about why were they writing the source. So are they writing it for a newspaper, and then which newspaper is it? The newspaper could be biased. Or are they writing it in a diary? Diaries are less likely to be biased because it's just their own opinion. Or are they writing it to try to sell you something? Because that'll really be biased. Reliability goes hand in hand with usefulness, and a question might be, how useful is source A for a historian studying anaesthetics? Or how useful is source B for a historian studying the 19th century? And you've always got to look at both sides of the argument, and so you look, oh look, it is useful because it shows this, it gives this opinion. It's not useful, it could be biased, it's unreliable, so you've got to give both sides of the argument, and in your conclusion you've always got to state, well I always state, that however reliable the source is, it's always useful because it does portray one opinion at the time. So someone had this view at the time, or someone was trying to show this view at the time, and they must have been doing that for a reason, so you've always got that reason there. This is a sample question on reliability and usefulness, and it's a photograph, and I reckon they're going to slip a photograph or 2 in there, because they'll want to have a variety of sources to keep you interested. So if we're looking straight at this, we can see it's a sewage system being built, and this is useful because it shows they were building sewers at the time. And if we look at the sewers themselves, they look like they're well designed, which shows that a lot of thought went into changes, and the people that are involved are very serious about them, want them to be permanent. Probably quite a bit of money had gone into them, and we can build on this money point by looking at the people at the top, who you can't really see it very clearly here, but they do look kind of posh with their hands on their hips and stuff. And they might have helped pay for it. If they're rich people, they want to see where their taxes have gone and stuff. But then you've got the other side, because I'm not doing all the points, so you can probably make up loads more points, but I'm just doing a few points. The other side of the argument is that it's a photograph only of one area, the sewers are only partially built, and you need another photo to see whether the changes were actually permanent or whether the building stopped. And it only shows one area as well, this photo. You can only see one small section of the country, and we don't know whether these sewers were just in London, which they probably were, because I know London got sewers at that sort of time, or whether they were across the country, so we only know whether these changes were in one area. You'll probably conclude of something like, this source is quite useful because it shows that there was an effort made to improve public health in the 19th century, but we cannot tell from this source how far these changes were spread across the country, or something like that, and then just make a bit of random stuff up. You get two main types of comparison questions. You'll get those that compare what the source says, and those that compare the reliability of the sources, or the usefulness, or something like that. So, for example, for the comparison of what the source says, you might have how far do source A and B agree with each other, and for the number 2 you might get something like, is source 2 more reliable than source 3, or something like that. And you've always just got to state the similarities and differences in the sources, and then overall conclude whether they agree or disagree, and probably saying a bit about reliability. Regardless of whether the question's about reliability or not, you've got to mention it. Sorry, my voice went really funny in that last slide. Sorry if you couldn't understand a word that I was saying. This is an example of a comparison question, and it's two sources. You probably can't see them quite clearly, I can't either. But the one on the left is called Operation Madness, and the one on the right is just an operation, and they're both about the use of anaesthetic in the 19th century. Both sources are cartoons, so their accuracy is unknown. That's a comparison you can make. Then you could say there's a difference, which is that source 1 shows an unhygienic room. Everybody looks dirty. Whereas source 2 shows a clean room, there's a surgeon in the back washing his hands, stuff like that, always getting all the little details. Then if we look at the names, you can see that source 1 shows a mad, rushed operation, complete chaos, whereas source 2 shows a calm operation with all surgeons seeming to have a purpose and knowing what they're doing. So depending on what the question is, you could say they show quite different things. But I think the main comparison for this question, at least with these two pictures, would be the purpose, because the picture on the left is quite anti-anaesthetic. Be anti-anaesthetic propaganda. Maybe people are against anaesthetic, because we know there's loads of reasons why people are against anaesthetic, because there's coffins on the floor, which shows that the artists blame the anaesthetics for deaths and stuff. Whereas source 2 appears to be a drawing to show what a hospital was actually like, and it looks, rather than trying to portray a message, it looks like it's just trying to show what a hospital was like. So it could be deemed more reliable because it's unbiased, whereas source 1 may have been exaggerated to make a point. But obviously we're not entirely sure what the purpose of source 2 was, mainly because I found it on the internet. I don't even know if what it says is right, but we don't know what it was, so we can't make a clear judgment on that. The last question is the question that nobody looks forward to. It's really big, I think it's usually a 10 marker, and it always asks you to use all of the sources in your own knowledge to decide to what extent a statement's true. So an example for a type 5 question would be, do you agree that James Simpson's discovery of chloroform and development of chloroform was the most major advance in the 19th century? Use all the sources and your own knowledge to explain your answer. And before you even start to write the essay, I would do a table in the margin, or not in the margin, or just on the page somewhere, do a table that's got the sources that agree with this, the sources that are neutral or agree and disagree, and the sources that disagree, because it will really help you to structure your essay. Then you write an introduction, which is basically a basic overview of the statement. You might slip in any extra information that you know, show off a bit of your knowledge, maybe give a bit of your opinion, but I wouldn't too much at this stage. Then you can write about all the sources that agree with the statement, and you might give a sentence or two about the reliability of each. And when I do this, I tend to do a paragraph for each source, quite a short paragraph, because I'm usually pressed for time at this point, but I do try to write a paragraph about each source. But towards the end, I'm running out of time, so it's like a sentence for each source. And then you do all the ones that are neutral and all the ones that disagree, and then you end your essay by giving your opinion and an overall conclusion. And make sure that at some point in this essay, if you've not done it for every source, you've got to talk about reliability, because it's worth a mark, which could be that mark between your B and your A, or your A and your A star, or whatever you want. So it could be a very important mark there. It doesn't really seem appropriate to be celebrating what must be the most terrible video I've ever made, but someone asked me to make it, and I did the best I could in the time I've got. I've got a lot of exams, so hope you understand. But good luck. This is the last history video ever, because I'm dropping it next year. Bye.